Hi everyone. So welcome to this interview with Desmond Hall. This is part of YA ThrillerCon. It's actually the last of the live events for this year. So really excited to be talking to Desmond about his debut novel, Your Corner Dark. He was also on a panel with me yesterday. So if you want to check out that panel, you can find links to it and all the other panels, readings and interviews at the website, which is www.yathrillercon.co.uk. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me for this interview, Desmond.
My pleasure.
So would you like to just sort of introduce yourself first, tell viewers a bit about you and what led you to writing your book?
Okay. Well, I was born in Jamaica, and my family moved to Jamaica, Queens, in New York. Love Jamaica. I mostly had a career in advertising, and I worked for Spike Lee, being his creative director on his advertising side for a long time. Learned a lot there. But I've always wanted to write, and I've written, probably 10 screenplays and 5 novels before getting to Your Corner Dark. I guess people talk about this, 10-year overnight success, but I think I'm more like a 30-year overnight success. And sort of a big deal for me was when we moved from Brooklyn up to Boston, which, I left kicking and screaming, but my wife got a tenure track job up here, and it was great to raise the kids out of the city. But I discovered Grub Street, which I've got to think is, if not it's one of the premier writing schools in the country, or maybe the world. It's founded by Eve Bridberg, and the artistic director is Chris Castellani, and they have an amazing program. And one of their programs is the Novel Incubator, where they take 10 students out of, let me back up. In order to get into the Novel Incubator, you have to submit a full manuscript. And they choose 10 per year, and they're running at a rate of about almost 3 out of the 10 get agents, and which is pretty amazing. Like, it makes it much better than the lottery of just, writing on your own. And the professor of the Novel Incubator, Michelle Hoover, we call her the book whisperer. She's just like amazing. And I don't think I would have gotten to this point to be with, Your Corner Dark coming out in January 21, without Grub Street. So that's, I guess, sort of an overview of my journey a little bit. As far as the book goes, Your Corner Dark in Jamaica is sort of, it's saying between a rock and a hard place. So it's all about like making a choice between 2 unenviable choices. And, and I am really horrible. I suck at titles. So I had called up, my cousins back in Jamaica and said, hey, what you say between a rock and a hard, please? And they were like, oh, Your Corner Dark. And I was like, yeah, it's great. So shared it with my agent, and she loved it, and that became the title. And so the story itself, and I've been sort of told not to get too specific because I always do that and give away too much. But it's a high school student, really great high school student, Frankie Green. He gets a scholarship, a full ride offer to study engineering in America. And, in Jamaica, jobs for young people are really hard to come by. So this is, the winning lottery ticket. But then an intense tragedy happens, and it plunges him into a world that he's sort of familiar with, but it's like a really bad world, one he never thought he would be in. And he has to sort of master it, kind of like Dante, in the Inferno, and plunge as deep as he can to claw his way out. And, and along the way, he finds love, for the first time. But even that love comes with a serious consequence. and he has to make yet another, your corner dark kind of choice to try to get out of it. So, it's sort of a very fast-paced, tense thriller, but it's also a story, as I mentioned, about choices. And it's also a story about how the Jamaica two-party system, sort of like, from an American point of view, the Democrats and Republicans in Jamaica, the JLP and the PNP, are directly responsible for starting the gang culture, because they sort of sponsored gangs in order to win the vote. And most of that is centered around the major city of Kingston. And so it speaks a great deal to that, as well as to the terrible problem of extrajudicial killings, which unfortunately, one of my uncles, fell victim to that. So, there's a great deal of, that sort of inspiration in the story as well.
Okay, yeah, that does make it sound like quite really close to your heart and like a really important story that you needed to tell. So what was it like when you first heard that it was going to be published? What was like your initial reaction, and where were you when you got like the call?
So, well, it's funny to say, right? So, I sort of gave myself not a time limit a bit, right? Because I have 2 kids to get through college, and how long would I, keep working this intensely and solely on the writing? And I'd gotten. It's funny how life is, right? The darkest before the dawn thing. I'd gotten a pretty lucrative offer to go back into advertising just before finding my beloved agent Faye Bender. And when that happened, it's sort of like, she's amazing, and her ability to sell books is amazing. And then she got me with an editor that I wish on every writer. I mean, I can't imagine a better editor. She's just amazing, Caitlin DeLuey. And yeah, amazing. And I think I was numb, and I think that was my delay in giving you a reaction to how I felt. I still don't know if I know that it's going to be published. I think I'm still, just numb over it. Can you be numb for like a year and a half? I think I can.
Yeah.
So.
Like it's such like a huge thing to happen, really, and especially with it being your debut novel as well. It's like such a special moment, just finding out that it's going to be published. But yeah, it can be so overwhelming.
Yeah.
So yeah, what is it that draws you to the YA thriller genre?
Well, I love life or death situations, and I think in these sort of life and death situations, it's a lot easier to sort of expose character, because I know you write from a very character driven area in your dystopian work and thriller work, and I love revealing the character along the way, sort of that drop the mask kind of thing, and I think like Robert McKee, the great story guru, says, in order to really reveal character, you have to put your character under very, very tough conditions in order to make them make tough choices. Because talk is cheap. You have to really show who you are by the actions you take. And in the thriller category, there's plenty of opportunity to put characters in very difficult, situations. And I think it's funny too, with the YA part. I'm kind of a accidental YA thriller writer, where I didn't necessarily know and think that I was writing YA. I just wrote this story of this, young student and the family and, the love interest and how it all, transpires. And I think my agent and Caitlin, the editor, they really, taught me a lot about the actual genre, and and I'm still learning and working hard at it. So, working.
So yeah, what was your actual writing process like then? Because I know we've talked about this in the other panel that we were both on, but yeah, I'd love to talk a bit more about like how you actually go about writing a manuscript when you just start off with like the initial idea.
Yeah, well, I'm a religious plotter, as you know,
Yeah.
and I don't know how you do it. You're like this plantser, right? Where you can do both, and you can just sit down and write something without an outline. And you have to tell me how you do that. But I have no idea how to do that without a plot. And as I mentioned, McKee, I've taken his 3-day seminar 3 times. So it's like three days, 12 hours a day, and it's like just amazing. Also, Michelle Hoover at Grub Street, she was amazing at teaching outline as well. I have here my dog-eared copy of Save the Cat.
Oh,
It I live by it. I think it's amazing, do and then I also took some classes with the late film director Mike Nichols. So I've really studied outline. It might be because my dad was an amazing auto mechanic, and he's like knew structure or something, and I just really appreciate knowing the outline of something beforehand. And I think it's worth saying, like for me, when I start with that page, because that blank page is terrifying, I sort of write the character in the middle of the page, what she or he wants, the physical thing, and then the internal thing.
mhm.
And then I write down what their flaw is, whether it's, not enough confidence, afraid of guns or flags or whatever. And then I start from there, and then I surround the protagonist with the forces of antagonism, right? Whether it's, the people that are against her or him, um, the times, the sort of societal things that are against them, the climate, et cetera, and as many things as I could think of. And I try to, surround the character, so to speak, in order to really create the negative side of the story. Because I think, the power of the story is in the negative side. And, McKee says that as well. It kind of pushes that character again to make tough choices, because if you don't make the negative side of the story difficult, then it's kind of like, well, that wasn't a really hard, journey for the character. And along these lines, I think it's good to note Michelle Hoover talks a lot about the crucible. So right after that inciting incident, when the character decides to take that journey to put their life back in order or to fix whatever, there comes this sort of genre category of the crucible. And she defines it as this thing that happens to your character where they can't go back to the safety of the first act.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. They can't like say, okay, you know what? This is too tough. This is too difficult. Solving this crime, finding the killer of my sister is way too tough. I have to go back to the first act. Um, and, so that's kind of the way I start the process. And I can't do it without it. I don't know how you can sit down, especially writing dystopian. Like, how can you like sit down and write, like just start writing? I'd be completely lost.
Oh yeah, I do get really lost on my first draft. So like they are the messiest drafts ever. They make no sense. I don't write in chronological order. I'll change like point of view halfway through, even though like it will be like one narrator. I'll just suddenly realize that I'm writing from a wrong character's point of view. Yeah, like my writing process is just so messy. Like you are way more organized than I
Yeah.
am with that. But Yeah, so like, yeah, when I start, I just sort of, I'll have like a rough idea of the story that I want to tell, and I'll just sit down, start writing straight away. And it's through writing like this really messy first draft, but I actually learn who my characters are, what the conflict is that they're facing, what their internal conflict is, and then I'll start to learn more about the world. And it's only really once I've got to the end of the first draft that I know sort of like what the story is that I'm trying to tell and what the shape of the manuscript will be. So yeah, like I'm sure if I did like outline a bit first of all, I would save myself so much time in the revisions
Right.
because yeah, I give myself so much extra work for doing it this way. But yeah, I know like when I have tried to outline before, like, I've just sort of like lost interest in the story and I haven't been as motivated to keep writing it. If I outline first, I feel almost like I've already written it and then I don't really want to write it all again. So
Right.
I need sort of like process of discovery and like the enthusiasm that I get from that. Like it's not the most efficient ways of writing a book, but I know it's the way that works for me. And yeah, it does give me loads of extra work to do, but I do quite enjoy doing it that way. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, for me, I have to know what is going on with the story. And we had talked a little bit about this in the plotting versus pantsing interview. The knowing the story, for me, I don't get tired of it. I'm always feeling like there's so much more the characters want to tell me that I'm not hearing. And I love these events. Like in the book I'm writing now, I created this kindly old lady that, gives the protagonist sort of this eye in the storm rest moment, which again is, a convention of, the sort of thriller or quest for that golden fleece. And it turns out that the old lady is diabolical, and the character has gone into more trouble. But a lot of the feedback I got from my, beloved writing group was that it's sort of a standalone moment. And for me, I would have either wrestled with saying, forget you guys, I'm going to keep it, stomp my feet, or I'd go about changing it. But I think because I am such a plotter, I put it down on the page and then I wrote 10 things that this old lady could affect in the story after after her introduction. And by doing that, I came up with one where she comes back to play against the sort of bad guys that are closing in on the protagonist. And it's a really rewarding moment because she's not kindly and nice anymore. The mask is dropped and you see her as like the vicious human being that she actually is. And you really get to play against type. So yeah, I have to plot.
Yeah. Yeah, like that moment that you're describing where sort of like the mask drops, I love those moments. Just like as readers, it's so satisfying just to like get that payoff and see sort of like how it ups the stakes even more and like the tension that it brings as well. So
Yeah. I mean,
I feel like go on.
I'm sorry I interrupted, but just quickly to say, like in the film, The Usual Suspects, when you find out who Kaiser Sose is, and I won't mention it to be completely a spoiler, but that reveal just is amazing. I'm not sure if I did, but I think I heard a gasp in the audience, sort of a collective gasp, like yeah, and I love those moments too. But I'm sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say because like I don't sort of plot. So when I'm writing in my twists and sort of like the big reveals, it's such a surprise for me as well because I know like with my last manuscript when I was like writing it, I didn't actually decide who the villain was until like the third draft because each of the drafts before that had a different villain and it was a
Wow.
different character being at the end as like being behind it all. And it was only when I got to like the third draft and I had like written this third ending with like a different reveal that I realized that that is the one that is applicable for this story and that's the one that felt right. So then after that, I then go back in and like lay all the foundation for that.
Right.
So
Wow. That's remarkable. So it's sort of like you're the detective along with
Yeah.
your detective, which I couldn't do. That's great. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I need the
where,
plot. Sorry.
where do you get your inspiration from then?
Well, so much of it, I guess comes from, life. Like for Your Corner Dark, as I mentioned, there's family and, family in Jamaica, things have changed a great deal, and I think the book overall is kind of my love letter to what the country once was. And, because right now there are 100, as the last report I read anyway, there are 190 gangs in Jamaica across 19 parishes. It's an island of 2.9, 2.7 million people. And we've had, several state of emergencies called in the last several years, where, the soldiers have been called out to go door to door to search for gang members, because crime had just gotten so crazy. And, this was a country where, there were areas of where things were tough, but, what has happened there, sort of beyond the resort gates, beyond the, awesome Jamaican sprinters and all the other, not stereotypes, but images that you see of Jamaica, the tourism pictures and everything. There's also a very tough story unfolding. And a lot of it has happened because the government has, it's, the economy has been really hit, paying back something like, $20 billion on a $19 billion loan and still owing another 8 billion. It's kind of a loan shark thing. And a lot of austerity measures have been passed. And when you have austerity measures in any country, much less a third world country, you can't do anything for the people. You can't do education. You can't, help out in, infrastructure building. And it becomes very difficult, and it's been a very tough time. And I think you can point to the economy as well as, the rise of gang culture that I mentioned that has really caused a lot of that. So, that's those stories, and seeing the change in the faces. Remember riding around the country before my mom died. We took a drive around Jamaica, and we looked at, like, the way the kids' eyes looked. There was a sort of a deadening, a collective deadening, and it happens when you have people that, no one's dumb. They see where opportunity lies and they see where it doesn't. And the fact that opportunity was going away was making people make desperate choices, right? Going back again to between being a rock and a hard place, having, being in a dark corner, and it crushed me, because I feel very fortunate to have, not suffered the fate of friends, back on Bogue Hill, where I grew up, or, a little bit in Kingston as well. Not everybody made it, and I feel very fortunate. So I feel sort of compelled, sort of my guilt is sort of funneled through the book, a bit of catharsis, or something, and, spreading the word.
Yeah. Yeah, like I know writing can be extremely cathartic.
Yeah.
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 So what are you currently working on then?
I'm sorry, could you say again?
What are you currently working on?
Oh, I'm
Are
sorry.
you writing another book?
Yeah. So there's a second book with Simon and Schuster, again with Caitlin DeLuey books. This one's called The Barrel Girl, and it's
Okay.
based on the inspiration there is, I guess I was a barrel child, and my sister would have been, in a way, or was. And it's a sort of a phrase that speaks to um, a psychological insight where many Jamaican and Caribbean parents, to that matter, leave their children on the island either with friends or, if they're old enough, to their own devices, while they go to a first world country to make more money than they could in 3 years than they could in 20 years back on the island. And one of the things that's really interesting is with these kids, they're sort of not allowed to say that they miss their parents because they get a barrel.
Right.
And, for, I guess, people that don't know what a barrel is, it's sort of this 5 foot drum, that it comes back, parents send back to the third world. And it's filled with stuff, anything from cooking oil to, a 2 pound bag of rice, to jeans, to whatever. And everyone back on the island would say to that barrel child, what are you complaining about? You have a barrel, you have a lot more than we do. So you're sort of not allowed to miss your parent. And so that was sort of the inspiration. And the way it has manifested itself is I've sort of created something that's kind of between Waiting for Godot and No Country for Old Men. And it's with a young woman, high school student, a senior, and her mom, who is in the first world, sending back the barrels, gets in a great deal of trouble. And she then stumbles across a drug deal gone bad. And the choice that she makes with, finding these, I won't mention what it is, but she finds something that puts her in a great deal of peril, but also gives her the opportunity to possibly help her mom as well as others in the local community. And so, she goes on this life or death quest where we begin to see who she is, but we also get to see who the pursuers are as well. And it comes down to a kind of crazy ending, or at least I hope it will be by the time I finish it.
It sounds really powerful. Yeah, I can't wait to sort of like learn more about that later.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll
great.
definitely be looking up when it's published. So,
Okay, cool.
yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have a rough release date for it? Like which year it will release? Do you know yet? Or
Oh, no, I haven't. I think I'm due to deliver the manuscript in January, but
okay.
since it's funny, since COVID, my way of dealing with stress is to work more, because
Mm-hmm.
already as a Jamaican, I'm a work hard already, but I'm working twice as hard now. Plus, the girls don't have soccer, they don't have fencing, um, so I don't make the wake up and make them lunch and drive them around and all of that, because that's my main sort of job. With the kids now, is being their driver. But in not doing that, I'm just writing up a storm, so to speak.
Okay. Yeah, that's super interesting because I've spoken to some other writers who've said that with all the lockdown and the pandemic that they've just been like sort of like blocked from working, like the creativity, their creativity levels have gone right down. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's really interesting to hear that you've just been like working a lot more.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because if I focus on all the things that are going on, I would fall into that dark place. But I've just, like, completely, I'm writing as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I get to write during the day now because I don't have that many fatherly duties. And then I get to write at night, which is like, I really love that time after everyone goes to sleep and it's really quiet.
Mm.
And yeah, so just writing a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Like writing at night does feel like this really secret like
Yeah.
time. Yeah, I really like writing sort of like late at night or first thing in the morning, sort of like 5 a.m., 6 a.m.
Oh, that I can't do the 5 a.m.
Uh, Well, I live on a farm, so like I'm quite used to
Oh,
getting
wow.
up early from like when I was younger. So
Okay.
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah,
Riding with the roosters.
yeah. Yeah, so my next question for you is one of my favorite questions to ask any writer, and it is, what are some of the weirdest typos you've made when drafting?
Okay. I think for me, it's the not it. You know, when you're revising and
Mhm.
you rewrite a whole chapter, but like you've left out, you haven't changed everything within that chapter, and you sort of leave something from the previous draft.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I one time was writing and I couldn't decide who was going to have sex with who.
Okay.
So I wrote one section and I rewrote it with the protagonist having sex with one person, and I left out the other part. So like, you know, when it got later on, the character was also having sex with the other person. It didn't, and it didn't. Yeah. It's like it was embarrassing because it was in front of the writers group, and it's like
Oh
so.
no.
So yeah, I think that's probably the weirdest.
Okay. That is a pretty weird one, so
Yeah.
yeah. What are some of your favorite YA thrillers and mysteries then? If we start talking about books that we recommend.
Well, I'm glad you asked. I have let me say, let's see, get this right.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, Sadie.
uh, like she's amazing. Courtney Summers, like wow. I mean, I don't want to give away too much, but she sort of creates this podcast and then has the podcast characters come alive.
Yeah.
And then within the crime, um, a sister goes after the killer of her sister, but then the podcast people interact with it, and it's like that's just genius. I
Yeah.
love these, like, right, like when you have these concepts, and you have like just an amazing concept that carries the story enough, but then her writing's pretty amazing also.
It is, yeah.
And I think another one to mention is let me
Oh
get
yeah.
that.
Allegedly.
Uh, yeah, yeah. She is so dark. Like it'd be. I feel like it'd be. I met her once. You might not remember me, but she didn't seem like as dark a person as she writes. But it's really dark and really suspenseful. One of those that like if you're reading and you hear like a crack in the back, you like jump.
Yeah.
Like yeah, and she's really good, Tiffany Jackson.
Have
So
you
I,
read any
I
of her books as well? Because
I'm
I've read.
sorry.
Have you read any of her other books as well? Because I haven't read
No, no,
it
that
yet.
was my first.
Yeah, because I've read Monday's Not Coming by her
Yeah.
as well. And that's just a phenomenal book. So
Wow. Okay. Well, I have to put that one on the list.
yeah,
And,
definitely.
yeah, do I have to read it in the daytime?
Wow.
Not late at night.
It's such a dark book, but yeah, the characterization is just amazing. Because like yeah, she's just such a masterful writer, like
Yeah.
so skillful with it, and yeah. Well, Courtney Summers as well, because I actually I read Sadie first of all, and then I went back after that and I read her debut novel. It's called Cracked Up to Be.
Right.
And that has just got a amazing main character,
Wow.
Paul Parker, and she's just like this intensely unreliable character. She's written as like quite an unlikable character, but then you've got like these flashbacks that show her as a completely different personality. And
Yeah.
you two jarring representations of the same character, and it's like you're constantly wondering what it is that's changed her from what she used to be like to what we're seeing her like now. And yeah, like Courtney Summers and Tiffany
Yeah.
Jackson, they're just both amazing writers.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing. And that's like a heck of a talent, to take someone that's unlikable and
yeah,
make you like root for them. I mean, what a great skill.
yeah. Because like I really like unlikable characters and characters that are written with that intention of being sort of unlikable. Especially like I've been sort of like thinking about this a lot from my own writing point of view, and often female characters who are like thought of as unlikable typically have sort of the character traits that are attributed to male characters.
Right.
And when they're attributed to male characters, they're sort of seen as being mysterious and like brooding.
Mm,
And as soon as those are then applied to a female character, readers often say, "Oh, she's unlikable." So
right.
yeah, I have been looking at that quite a lot in quite a lot of detail recently.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and we have to change that. That's like a major mission. I feel that way as well. They should be allowed to be tough and make all those difficult choices and mistakes that male characters have been able to make throughout time. Yeah, totally
Yeah,
with you.
definitely. So yeah, what advice do you have for aspiring writers?
That's an easy one. I'll give I guess sort of the advice I'd give to my younger self, and it's find either a writing school or a mentor, or best both, that aren't just someone you write with, but like an actual institution that where you can study and learn all the facets, um, because I think you get this thing that I completely wasn't aware of. You get a community, and I didn't understand how important a community was, right? So first on, the fact that, writing is a lonely business, and, you need people along the way to just have some camaraderie. But also that community also serves as amazing sounding board for your work, giving you ideas and everything. Like, I think about, people in my writing group that have given me, certain things that I've used in Your Corner Dark and I'm using now in Barrel Girl, and, priceless. I could sit at my little desk for months and months and never come up with that stuff. But having that community to talk to and have them give you invaluable feedback is amazing. So I'd say to anyone, that just wants to try to live that, Jack Nicholson shining the myth of the sort of, the lonely writer that isolates themselves to come up with genius. I think I guess some people do that, but I think the community is so important to have, to be able to, refine your work.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And just like having critique partners is just so valuable as well.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. So we're coming up to like the end of this interview now. So I was just wondering if there's anything else that you'd like to talk about that perhaps we haven't yet covered.
Wow. Well, I want to thank you, for not just inviting me. I appreciate it, giving a debut writer a chance, but also putting this great ThrillerCon together. And, and again, I have to give you more kudos to your graphic skills. The pictures and everything and all that, and really well designed. So thank you. And, the writers I met on the panel yesterday, I hopefully will keep in touch with them because I really dig their style. So yeah, that was great.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining. Yeah, and if you're watching this and you want to check out some of the other panels, particularly the one that Desmond was on yesterday,
Yay.
yeah, you can go to our website, which is yathrillercon.co.uk, and there's a schedule page there where you can see a list of all the panels, interviews, and readings that we've had, and they've got links for each one where you can find it on YouTube to watch it at any point. So yeah, you can't. It's not just a case of needing to watch it live. You can catch up at any time. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. And I guess, as you say over there, cheerio.